Hey everyone, well it's been another crazy week in AI. We've already looked at Stable Diffusion Video and Pika's amazing 1.0 update. So today we're diving into prompting a 3D world and then in-painting it with characters. There's a bit of an asterisk there, I'll explain that when we get there. Plus, we're going to take a look at a really stellar video-to-character animator from a pretty surprising source, Microsoft's new AI talking avatar, which looks to be setting a new standard. It's so good, I'm using it right now. Or am I? All right, lots to cover. Let's dive in. So first up, I think you could file this one under work in progress. It is definitely not ready for prime time yet, but I think it's the first thing that I've seen that gives a really good indication of where things are going. Illumine.ai, who we have seen on the channel before with projects like Insta3D, where you could, upload an image and it would create sort of a depth map 3D environment out of it. Well, they've been experimenting with using latent consistency models to create 3D environments basically in real time. And again, this is totally work in progress. So if you're part of the it's just not there crowd, yes, that's the point here. So the basic idea here is that as you're navigating the camera using the WASD keys, the latent consistency model is generating based off of the prompt and the viewpoint from the previous perspective. This sort of Elden Ring example, I think, was earlier in their experiment, so it's a little bit on the slower side. That said, the latest example I saw, they had it up and running on mobile, so you can see it's definitely already getting faster. Obviously, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of stability, consistency, and frame rate, but I think this gives a really good illustration of where things are headed. And also, it should be pointed out that latent consistency models are like a month old, so let's everybody take a deep breath and just appreciate the weirdness. Moving on, as we generate these 3D environments, the question of course becomes, can we populate them with characters? Well, a new project called GenZi seems to have us covered there. Unfortunately, you can't use it unless you were born between 1995 and 2010. I don't care if you didn't think that was funny. I thought that was funny. So this is another one that's kind of in abstract and paper form. It basically synthesizes virtual humans interacting in a 3D environment from brief text descriptions. So as a note, GenZi doesn't generate the 3D environment, but rather allows you to pick a viewpoint and a perspective, prompt for a character action, and then GenZi will create a character contextually within that scene. So the interesting trick here is that they're not actually using any captured 3D data, but rather what they're doing is using diffusion models to populate the character. The way that they're doing this is pretty interesting. As you can see here, here's our 3D scene. Our P is our camera point, basically. GenZi then analyzes that P point from numerous different perspectives, and then from there basically begins in-painting characters from each of those perspectives. It then takes each of those outputs and applies a control net style pose estimator on them and then recombines them essentially into a 3D model. You can see here that by using this method, GenZi does seem to have an understanding of its environment with this, character playing a piano or this one walking across a bridge. Meanwhile, previous models clearly did not get the whole piano playing thing, and the bridge, like this character is no clipping like it's in a Bethesda game. So between what Illum is experimenting with and what GenZi is doing here, it's a very good indication of how much control you're going to have in AI image generation very soon. And if you're wondering, hey, can I animate those characters? Well, yeah, I do suspect that will be coming soon, considering Angela Dai, who was one of the authors of the GenZi paper, has another project called Contact Guided 3D Human Object Interaction Generation. So yeah, I think it's probably likely that those two projects will eventually end up merging together if they haven't already. Speaking of animation, we have Animate Anyone, consistent and controllable image to video synthesis for character animation. And one of the credited authors on this is the Alibaba Group. Alibaba, of course, being the global shopping market where you can buy this cool watch for $5.40. And hey, even if it doesn't work, it'll be right twice a day. The example videos are pretty good. They are, of course, dancing girls turned into anime characters because TikTok ruined everything. But this might blow your mind because those girls aren't dancing. Instead, those were still images that were then animated, then turned into anime characters. Not only is the application of motion really impressive here, but the consistency and the fact that her facial features aren't bugging out with eyeballs popping flopping around, as we often find when you start animating still images. They also provided an example with like bootleg Roy Kent here. And what was really impressive here is how the folds of the clothes actually react to the animated model. And that actually made me realize maybe why Alibaba is in this game. Because in their fashion video synthesis shootout, where clearly, their model is outperforming the other models, well, that made me realize this is the Minority Report thing. I can almost guarantee you that the intended use case here is that your digital avatar will be trying on clothes and then be shown in really awesome, cool, hip locations. What's funny is that Minority Report didn't even go this far, which goes to show that the future is even weirder than a Philip K. Dick story. Next up, we have Gaia, generative AI avatars. Basically, Microsoft's shot at HeyGen
magazine. Tremendous photography there, tremendous innovation there. That's all pretty standard now.
I'm clocking this guy from Minnesota based off of the and the pronunciation of that. Midwesterners, please let me know. Overall, I don't think it's bad. It still has some of the problems inherently baked into AI avatars, kind of that bobblehead and the inconsistency in blinking. But Microsoft has some money to throw around. So taking some of the concepts that we looked at in the Alibaba character animation and applying that to AI avatars, they have this.
Աշխատում եմ եւ սովորում եմ Դանիայի տեխնիկական համալսարանում եւ անում եմ մագիստրատուրա.
I think she's speaking Armenian there, so like 300 points to anybody in Minnesota that speaks Armenian and can confirm both. Overall, this ends up being the best AI avatar, I think, to date. Granted, it's a bit of a cheat considering that it is driven by actual video, but it solves the whole problem of the kind of bobbly head movement and the inconsistent blinking. Gaia also showcases a number of text instructions, such as give me a smile here, emotional instructions, such as sad, and just straight directional instructions like turn your head to the left. Given that this is a Microsoft project, maybe you'll be able to turn off your camera for your next Teams meet and send in your AI avatar to give those quarterly sales reports. Rounding out with two quick shots, Kria.ai introduced their upscaler and enhancer. We took a look at that in the last video. Well, they've taken that and applied that over to their real-time image generator. So taking a look with just kind of some random scribbles here, let's go ahead and hit the randomize button, see what pops up. Sure, we'll take that. There is now an enhance button down here. You just click that and your image is enhanced. Is it great? I don't know. It makes decisions on its own, clearly. I mean, everything in the background is now a really, really, really shallow depth of field, but these flowers are in focus. Changing the mode over to cinematic and hitting the enhance button again. I'm not sure. It kind of has like a weird like HDR kind of over processed look to me. So, if it's your thing, it's there. If it's not, don't use it. Meanwhile, over in Gen 2 land, we have controls for pan and tilt, and props to them for correct cinematography terminology. I had planned on generating up an example with pan and tilt, and then I ran across friend of the channel, Uncanny Harry's experiment with it, and I was like, well, this is so cool. Let's just run this instead. Harry also recently produced The Cold Call, which is a AI-generated British gangster film using Midjourney, Gen 2, and Pika. It's really, really cool. Link is down below. So there you go, another completely insane day in creative AI. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Tim.